The first time Lang noticed the change, he thought it was a trick of the light, the kind that plays on your eyes when you've been staring too long at something you're not ready to let go of. But the wrinkles hadn't been there the night before. He was sure of it. The photograph on his kitchen table creased at the corners, soft from decades of handling, had aged overnight. If something you loved began to decay every time you looked at it, would you turn away? Or would you keep staring, even if it meant watching it slowly disappear? Lang Whitaker was 42 and living alone in a narrow house outside Columbus, Ohio. The place smelled faintly of dust and black coffee, and the wallpaper peeled like tired skin. He hadn't meant for his life to shrink into something so small. Years ago, he had been the kind of man who hosted backyard barbecues and drove to Lake Erie on a whim. He had married a woman named Hannah with bright auburn hair and laughter that echoed down grocery store aisles. They had a son, Caleb, who once believed his father could fix anything with duct tape and patience. Then came the accident on I-71. A rainy October night. A semi that never slowed. Hannah survived for 3 days. Caleb didn't. The photograph was taken the summer before the crash. It showed the three of them on a pier in Put-in Bay, wind tangling their hair, the sky impossibly blue. Lang kept it in a simple oak frame by his bed for years. After Hannah passed from complications that winter, the photo became the only proof that his family had once been real. He started noticing the aging after he moved the frame to the kitchen table. It began subtly. The colors dulled, as if drained by invisible fingers. The whites yellowed. Hannah's face lost a hint of its glow. At first, Lang blamed humidity or cheap printing. He even drove into town to show it to a photography shop run by a man named Marcus. Marcus squinted at it under fluorescent lights and shrugged. It looked old, he said. Just old. But Lang knew better. The next morning, Caleb's bright grin in the picture seemed thinner. The edges of his cheeks sagged slightly, as though time had touched him again. Hannah's auburn hair, once rich and warm, faded toward gray. Lang stopped sleeping. He tested a theory he was too afraid to believe. He placed the photograph in a drawer and left it there for 2 days. When he finally gathered the courage to open it again, the image hadn't changed. The paper was still fragile, but no older than before. His chest tightened. He lifted the frame and stared. He stared for minutes that turned into an hour, tracing the outline of his son's smile, memorizing the curve of Hannah's hand resting on his shoulder. By evening, the picture had shifted. Hannah's eyes looked tired now. Caleb's face bore the faintest shadow beneath it, as if he had grown into a teenager inside the frame. Lang dropped the photograph as though it had burned him. It became a ritual after that. He would hide it, then retrieve it, compelled by grief stronger than fear. Every glance pulled time forward inside the glossy rectangle. Caleb aged from 10 to 13, to 17. Hannah's hair silvered. Her skin thinned. They were living whole lives in silence while Lang remained frozen at 42. What would you do if you could watch the people you lost grow older without you? Would you deny yourself that mercy? Or would you accept the curse, just to see them one more time? Lang chose to look. Winter wrapped Ohio in ice, and still he looked. Caleb became a young man in the photograph, shoulders broad, jaw sharper. Hannah's face carried lines of wisdom and exhaustion. There was no joy in their eyes anymore, only a distant softness, as if they were waiting for something just beyond the frame. Lang began neglecting everything else. He called in sick to his job at the hardware store until they stopped calling back. Bills piled up unopened. His sister Rebecca drove from Dayton to check on him, but he never answered the door. The only thing that mattered was the photograph and the strange, cruel gift it carried. Months passed. Each time he gazed at it, years slipped by for them. Caleb reached his 30s inside the frame, his smile gentler now, his hair flecked with gray. Hannah looked almost the age Lang remembered from her final hospital days, fragile but serene. Then something else changed. The background shifted. The pier faded, replaced by a quiet shoreline at dusk. The sky deepened into purples and golds. Hannah and Caleb were no longer standing stiffly for a camera. They were sitting side by side, looking outward, as though aware of someone watching from far away. Lang's heart pounded so loudly he thought it might break his ribs. He lifted the photograph closer to his face. Caleb, now a man in his 40s within the image, turned slightly. His eyes seemed to meet Lang's. The paper warmed in Lang's hands. And for the first time, he saw himself reflected in the glossy surface, not the man he was now, unshaven and hollow, but an older version. His own hair thin and white, his shoulders bent. The next morning, he felt pain in his knees that hadn't been there before. His reflection in the bathroom mirror looked subtly different. A deeper crease between his brows. A stiffness in his smile. He didn't need proof. He understood. The photograph wasn't just aging them. It was aging him. Every look stole time from the present and poured it into that fragile square of memory. His grief had become a transaction. The more he clung, the more life drained away. Would you keep looking, knowing it was costing you the years you still had left? Lang sat at the kitchen table long into the night. Snow pressed against the windows. The house groaned in the cold. He studied Hannah and Caleb, now elderly inside the frame, their hands intertwined. They looked peaceful, almost luminous. He realized something that cut deeper than any curse. They weren't trapped. He was. They had moved forward, in whatever strange way the photograph allowed. They had aged together. Loved together. Existed beyond the frozen moment of loss. But Lang had remained in that October night on I-71, replaying headlights and rain, refusing to step into another season. Tears slid down his face, hot and relentless. He stood, carried the photograph to the backyard, and dug through frozen soil with trembling hands. The earth resisted him. It felt wrong to bury the last image he had of his family. It felt like losing them all over again. If you were in his place, would you let go? Or would you choose to keep a fading shadow over the possibility of a sunrise? Lang pressed his lips to the glass one final time. He did not look at their faces again. He lowered the frame into the ground and covered it with soil. The next morning, sunlight filtered through his curtains in a way he hadn't noticed in years. His knees still ached, but no more than they had the day before. When he checked the mirror, he looked exactly 42. Time had stopped stealing from him. He drove to Dayton that afternoon and knocked on Rebecca's door. She opened it with cautious relief. Lang didn't have a speech prepared. He simply stepped forward and let his sister hold him while years of silence unraveled between them. Grief never left him completely. It lingered like a scar you trace without thinking. But he began working again, volunteering at a youth center in Columbus, helping boys who reminded him of Caleb. He found himself telling stories about Lake Erie and windy summers, about duct tape and patience. He learned that memories don't need to be frozen to be honored. Years later, when his hair truly did turn white and his hands shook with age, Lang often wondered what the photograph would have shown if he had kept looking. But the wondering no longer consumed him. He had chosen life over longing, presence over illusion. Sometimes love asks us to hold on. Sometimes it asks us to let go. Before this story ends, tell me in the comments what you would have done if you were Lang, standing in that frozen backyard with the photograph in your hands. And if his journey stirred something inside you, if it made you think about the weight of memory, the cost of regret, or the quiet power of second chances, please like, share, comment, and subscribe, but only if it truly touched your heart.